Now joining us for a discussion on the why of SRI, please welcome back Chief Executive Officer of SAFE, Avery Ash, in conversation with Head of the Security and Resiliency Initiative at JPMorgan, J. Horine.
Thank you, Jay. Let's get right into it. So Jamie Dimon has been warning in his shareholder letter for years about the risk of over-reliance on fragile supply chains. In launching SRI, he said it has become painfully clear the U.S. needed to act. What shifted to take JPMorgan from recommendations of action? Thanks.
Second time in a row. What shifted to take JPMorgan from recommendations to action and to back that action with a $1.5 trillion commitment?
Well, first of all, Avery, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. And my unpronounceable last name is Horine. It's never right. To answer your question, let me start. This is the op-ed that Jamie wrote on October 13th in the Wall Street Journal. He said, the U.S. has allowed itself to become too reliant on unreliable sources of critical minerals, products, and manufacturing, all of which are essential for our national security. America needs more speed and investment. It also needs to remove obstacles that stand in the way. And I think that Jamie's view was that we would work together as opposed to apart, to convene, to come to groups like this, to have a conversation about these very things that we're short on and see what people thought. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it was about action. It was about doing deals, bringing people together, actually putting money to work, and taking talk, but going from talk into action.
And maybe this isn't supposed to be a pop quiz here today, but tell me more about the 5 pillars for SRI. How are they determined? How are you mapping the broad array of strategic vulnerabilities?
So we did a bunch of work to sort of narrow the scope, to make sure that we were raising money, facilitating transactions, investing what we call an initial $10 billion off of our own balance sheet into transactions. And the first ones that we did, like MP Materials and Korea Zinc and Perpetua, led to deals like the L3 Harris rocket engine deal. But when you do that, you begin with supply chain and advanced manufacturing, defense technology, energy independence. You get into frontier technologies and cyber and all the things on that. And then initially, actually, in this, we didn't include healthcare and pharma, but it's clear that biotechnology, biomanufacturing, and some of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, some of the bottom layer of those, we're not doing either. So we've added that as the 5th pillar.
Yeah, and I think certainly for those first 4 pillars, you have an audience here who's got deep expertise and a lot of interest in those sorts of investments and those sorts of supply chains. I do want to talk a little bit about SRI. Its description is it's 100% commercial, right? This isn't philanthropy. This isn't a government mandate. This is a business decision. It encompasses, as you mentioned, $1.5 trillion in facilitated financing, advisory work, and M&A support.
Yep.
And your mention of an initial $10 billion directly off of your balance sheet in direct equity and venture capital. Can you help this audience understand the mechanics of the program for that first $10 billion and then how that gets leveraged up to $1.5 trillion?
I had to sort of count out the zeros and trillion to begin with when I began this. It's probably 50% or more than we would have done in normal course. We've financed these industries and advised these industries for a long time. I think putting our own capital into it, our own equity. Todd Combs had been on our board, was the chief investment officer of Berkshire Hathaway, and has joined us to help lead that effort. I think that, again, back to the thing of when we think about that amount of money, when you think about the remanufacturing in the United States, the reshoring of these things, some of the nearshoring, I think that it leads to a variety of other. If you want to build a plant, you need welders, you need construction crews, you need trades. There are a whole bunch of things that come out of this. So we are helping to finance welding schools and other things that allow us to build the things back in America and with our allies, and hopefully around the world. And I think that a lot of this will enable a new sense of growth. And I think that we've seen that it's been met with such enthusiasm. We've had well over 5,000 inquiries around the globe. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So it hasn't been narrow, it's actually been incredibly wide.
And then this is obviously a multi-year effort. How do you think about prioritization and where you start with? Like right now, what does that $10 billion aperture look like across those 5 pillars? Equally spread, or are you prioritizing some first?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think some of it began with what things are the hardest to do and the most obvious and touch the most industries. I think the first 3 deals that we did were in critical minerals. And I think that if I look back a few years ago, what I didn't realize the role that critical minerals played in magnets, the roles that magnets played from cars to nuclear submarines to missile systems and the like. So we took a hard look at, and that's sort of where we began. We've spent a lot of time on supply chain. We've hired an amazing team. We've gone from 1 person, me, employee 1 in this, to a better part of 30 people full-time helping us do this. And so it's the prioritization was on the first things that companies wanted. We spent time, obviously, with the United States government and others to sort of collectively come to that. And I think now you'll see it broaden out and go into additional areas like I talked about in healthcare and the like.
Yeah, I mean, as an organization that's been working on critical mineral supply chains for the better part of a decade, first, thank you. We appreciate the attention. What do you see? What is your investment thesis, though, for critical minerals specifically? And how do you think about the risk profile of these investments, which often involve long development timelines, volatile commodity prices, intense geopolitical exposure when compared to a more conventional JPMorgan deal?
Well, I think that for all of us, there are things that we can do to try to compress, and in fact, as Jamie talked about, speed of execution, permitting, just understanding the supply chain and the process that people go through to get things permitted, having a conversation and education around this. So while it is commercial, and we will work with people and try to have companies and plants and the like that make sense and are welcome in the world and make money, we're also spending a lot of time on policy. We're spending a lot of time with legislators, both on the local, the state, and the federal level, coming to think to opportunities like this to talk to you, to have feedback on how we're doing and what we're addressing. So as much as anything, it's raising everyone's awareness of these issues, working with companies, organizations like yours, governments and government officials to sort of collectively come together to sort of make sure that we make these things that in many respects make things that we decided that we weren't going to continue to make.
So one of the reasons that we at SAFE have prioritized our work on critical minerals is that our foreign adversaries have used the processing of these critical minerals as a geopolitical lever. So export controls on things like rare earths, antimony, germanium, gallium. How does that geopolitical risk factor into your investment decision making and your assessment of which projects are most strategically important to back?
Well, Jamie, our CEO, has said that no company can be stronger than the country in which it exists. And so I think that a lot of this has to do with the strength of the West and the idea that promotes peace. And so I think that it also promotes a lot of great things in this country to be making things. Most of the things that we decided not to do, we made that decision. We decided to move things offshore. There were reasons why, and we see some of the consequences. And I think that I've been encouraged. My main message, I hope when you leave, my main message is one of optimism. I've really been struck by the amount of capital that's available. I've been struck by people coming to a convention like this, the companies and the CEOs that want to build things again in America and in allied countries, and hopefully, non-allied countries over time come to this as well. So I've been the enthusiasm that people have, the awareness of the issues, and kind of a collective way to do it in a thoughtful, balanced way that will go through administrations. Because I think that's the key, as opposed to being partisan, things that will go through administrations, things that are good for the populace in total.
We are right there with you on that. One of the most persistent challenges, that we hear about for critical minerals financing is what analysts often call the bankability gap. So the structural mismatch between risk-adjusted returns that commercial lenders require and the economics of many critical minerals projects, particularly in refining and midstream processing. Many projects that are geologically sound and strategically vital can't attract private debt financing without government de-risking through offtake guarantees, price floors, direct equity. How does SRI navigate that sort of a gap? And how do you see the right tools now in place to make the next generation of critical minerals projects genuinely bankable without relying entirely on government support and financing?
I think the first thing that you do is you get together with a wide group of people in a piece of paper, if you will, or a computer screen, and you go through and say, all right, so we can't make this profitably. By how much? And we have a team that has done an amazing job on something we call the price of resiliency. All right, well, how much are we short by? Are we short by 5%? Short by 25%? We short by 50%? And then is there anyone, if you will, in this room who can help us? Oh yeah, well, if we cut the lead time on this, or I've got a different supplier, or we think artificial intelligence can do this. And so you basically just have a series of people solving problems. And I think that when you take a look at the role of the venture capital community, the private equity community, again, any number of people sitting in, as part of this room, when people get together, that price of resiliency goes down, and it can go down pretty significantly. And then when you take a look at, okay, if we solve that, how much of that is the total bill of materials? You can all of a sudden the price of resiliency, in many cases, not all cases, can be something that can be attended to, something that people say, I have a better idea, how about if we do it differently? So a big part of this is encouraging all of you to get together and to think through, okay, so we can't do certain things in this country, why can't we? And come together and have a conversation about that. And some of these things, shipbuilding, others, I'm not saying that they're easy, they're difficult, but collectively, they're things that over some period of time, we can start to chip away at.
That's a great tee up for the next question I have. So, JPMorgan is the world's largest bank by assets, and SRI sends a powerful signal. But one institution, even JPMorgan, can't on its own fill the financing gap for the US and allied critical mineral supply chains. What would it take for the broader commercial banking community to follow your lead? And then for the commercial banking folks in the audience, what have you learned from this process that might be helpful to push out to others?
Well, if we wanted to do it ourselves, I wouldn't be here. So let me begin with that. I'd be back in my office trying to do a deal. So we want to invite everyone to be part of this process. I think that over time, people will realize that you can make money in this, but you're problem solving. And you're probably involving people, supply chain experts, AI experts, operations experts, sort of a new partnership, for lack of a better word, with state, local, and federal governments, with leaders. We're with a thing with Secretary Bessent and the Treasury secretaries from around the world. So I think that as people learn more about it, they realize that these challenges can be addressed, in many cases need to be addressed. I think that then what seems insurmountable, you learn more about it, you say, what about that? You tweak that, you say, how about her helping us, how about him? I just think that what we've seen so far in just the 5 or 6 months since we stood this up is an amazing amount of can-do attitude. There's a lot of capital. There are issues that need to be resolved. There are bottlenecks that can be de-bottlenecked. And you can see a surge of things on the energy side. We just took a company public called X Energy does small modular reactors. That probably wasn't in anyone's sight 5 years ago, but here they are. So I think I just very encouraged by what you're seeing broadly.
So that gets us into the energy conversation. You know, one in achieving the goals of SRI, you know, one of the items here is access to reliable, abundant, affordable energy. Grid constraints have come up a lot lately and on the stage over the past 2 days. How are you seeing those sorts of grid constraints play out for SRI, and what can be done about it?
Again, the first thing to attend to an issue is to stand up and say this is an issue. And do we have the collective will to do something about it? And in lieu of that, what else can be done? So on the one hand, we would like to see thoughtful permitting reform achieved. I mean, the grid is an amazing machine. I used to run our power business once upon a time. But in lieu of that, what else can we do? And there are things that people are doing in states like Wyoming, where we had a summit with their Governor Gordon. There are a variety of ways where we can transport things back. It doesn't always have to be molecules and electrons. It can be finished goods. They can come via rail and air and roads and the sea. So there again, when you get in a room with a bunch of people and say, this is the problem, what can we do? And someone raises their hand and says, well, how about if we build the factory here? How about if we bring them, some of these goods back in a different way? I just think that a lot of this is a group like this coming together to say, we need to solve these problems. What can we do together?
Yeah, and I think that's something that struck us is, you know, as part of your kind of worldview, that this is not just about rebuilding industries, but about rebuilding the infrastructure that underpins competition. You know, everything from energy grids to logistics systems that enable production.
Yeah.
How are you translating that into actual investment decisions? I mean, it's a very broad mandate, rebuilding American infrastructure. And what infrastructure are you seeing as most critical to unlocking broader industrial resilience?
Well, I see there are things happening. McCreary Zinc is building a zinc smelter in Tennessee. You see even people outside of SRI, some of the things that LNG companies are doing. There's a lot of big kit being built in America right now. I think you're going to see pharmaceutical companies, other people, as they build new facilities, the automotive companies and the like. So I'm really, again, very encouraged that as we go through this, that people are also reaching out to think about new ways to build factories. Should they be drone enabled? Should they be drone centric? How do we think about, how do we build something so that it's not old, before its time? So we're talking to a wide variety of people with ideas around creating ecosystems and parks and quote unquote, almost in some ways new cities, just open-minded about ways to address these solutions with some old ways of thinking that can be very powerful and some new ways and new techniques and taking advantage of things like artificial intelligence and the like. When those things all come together, not one size fits all, it can be very powerful. And that's what we're seeing around the US and around the world.
So one thing that you've talked about that struck me is across the pillars that you've spelled out, workforce as in skills as it plays into each of those.
Yeah.
And your idea of viewing workforce as actually its own supply chain, I thought that was really interesting. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you're viewing workforce as a component of that competitiveness.
I think that we need welders, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need all the people, engineers to build these things. I think people are thinking very creatively around trade schools, thinking community colleges, for-profit entities that can help people get these skills, get to work. A lot of this is also wonderful because there's an apprenticeship aspect to it, which is kind of wonderful, where you learn from seniors before you. And we see that occurring in nuclear. We see it coming on in a whole variety of industries. So workforce is one of the big constraints. And I think now that people acknowledge that, they're spending a lot of time and effort. I know we're spending a lot of time and effort on it. And I'm very encouraged around what I'm seeing. You can, for a very low price to no price, you can get a job, you can make, a very significant living, and you can do it in sort of all parts of the country and in other parts of the world. It's It's a pretty wonderful thing, and I think that it's also something that is, it's not hundreds of jobs, it's many, many multiples of that.
So this audience has heard a lot about pillars over the last couple of days. Undersecretary Duffy talked about pillars as part of his readiness at the Pentagon. SAFE certainly has our own pillars of power. You have your pillars. As we think about these across industries, what do you see as the one thing that leaders here should be focusing on to build lasting resilience? And then what gives you confidence that alignment across capital, policy, and industry is finally coming together? And then as a bonus question, what can SAFE be doing to help out on this and help you out on this?
Well, I'll work backwards. I think what SAFE can be doing is convening and getting people together to listen to various points of view, new ways of doing stuff, how they marry with old ways. What gives me hope is there's so many people involved, so many CEOs, so many leaders of all different stripes who say, hey, build a factory in my town, educate my workforce, let my community colleges and other schools help educate these people. Let's do it in a way that people aren't saddled with crushing debt as they go through. And then lastly, I think we have to do this. We can do this. And there's going to be an industrial kind of renaissance in the U.S. I think that it leads to a lot of high job satisfaction. People are making stuff that has real value to them, a real meaning to them. So again, as I look back on what has been an amazing 6 months for us, invite all of you to go on this journey. It sounds like if you're here, you're probably on that journey. And I just congratulate you and your organization for what you're doing to bring this together. It's really never been more important.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.